questions. Thank you. Please share your questions in the chat box. We will, if you want to direct your question to some speaker, please also mention that. So after the presentation at the QA session, we will go to your questions and answers. With that, let me go through the webinar, present to you or introduce you the topic, and then I will also introduce you the presenters. So what is end user subsidy? The end user subsidy is something which we are using to promote the uptake of carefully designed and well-informed subsidies, and that is what we are going to discuss today. And this one is basically to crowding in knowledge, resources, and expertise from all stakeholders interested in participating. We are offering a platform for exchange, dialogue, and extensive consultation among stakeholders, and sharing lessons learned, tools, and information. Testing prototype end-user subsidy designs, and what we intend to do is that basically the pilots that are being carried out, the projects that are being carried out, we are trying to gather this knowledge and disseminate so that projects in the World Bank or other donors and other supporters of this end-user subsidy can benefit from it. I would also like to inform you that this end-user subsidy lab is a partnership between the SMAP of World Bank, GOGLA, and NDEV. So I want to thank them as well for organizing and helping us in this in taking this lab forward. And for today's webinar, I wanted to thank Federico Henriks and Jenny Tracy for supporting me in this webinar. Let's go to the next page where I will introduce myself and the other speakers that we have. So I am Raihan Elahi. I'm the lead energy specialist from SMAP, World Bank. I'm leading the energy access pillar of SMAP, and end user subsidies is one of the activities supported under one of the windows under energy access pillar. Then today we have a presentation from Mercy Corp, and from Mercy Corp it will be Emmanuel Azebor who will be presenting his experience on end user subsidy today to all of you. Emmanuel is a senior energy advisor at Mercy Corp and a project manager for the Mercy Corp-led energy access project in the BDBD refugee settlement in Uganda. And we will hear from him more about this project today. Then we have Bettina Besh Simwaka, head of component refugees at GIZ Uganda, who are currently implementing a variety of activities for energy access, including a blended subsidy scheme, and currently designing an end-user subsidy pilot focused on refugee-hosting communities. The two off-grid solar companies that participated in the Mercy Corp project are D-Light and Village Power. So from them, we also have representatives. We have Simon Biamukama, head of sales and distribution at D-Light Uganda, and we have Alan Okello, formerly worked at Village Power, responsible for business development, marketing, and consumer experience. Now, a business lead in Tukolo, Uganda. Last but not the least, we have a representative from the government of Uganda, represented by Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company. We have Speciusa Kimere Ndigire. She is the managing director at the UECCC, and they are in place to develop and implement innovative financing solutions for renewable energy development and access, with a particular focus on enabling private sector participation. In particular, UECCC is the implementation agency of the World Bank-funded UCP Access Scale-Up project, which will look to scale access nationwide and has a specific component on refugee and host communities. So this is also a reason why we took a lot of interest in this topic, because last year, the bank approved this EASP project, the Scale Up Energy Access Project, which is about $638 million. And we have allocated more than $200 million to support refugee host communities as grant to Uganda. And a portion of this funding, along with the IDA money, will benefit UVCCC so that they can transfer that funds through access to finance, through financial intermediaries, to private solar companies to promote solar systems. But they will get more benefit if they support refugee host communities and districts. So we would like to understand also how, from these energy subsidies lab, this project design can be improved. And at the end of the day, will help Speciusa to make sure that this funding from the bank benefits the Ugandan people and the refugees living in Uganda based on the lessons that we have learned from the projects that you are managing. We'd also like to say that why we are doing this webinar, around half of the unconnected households live in fragile and conflict-affected countries, and Off-Grid Solar Markets report stated that. We also know that the affordability constraints are more stark in refugee settings, and Uganda refugee and host community household expenditure is 3 to 5 times lower than rural average. So again, they have higher affordability challenges, and hence they may need customized support for end user subsidy. Uganda offers a good learning opportunity because not only now, but even before that, there have been several efforts from UNHCR and other organizations to support the refugees in Uganda. Uganda is one of the countries with highest number of refugees in sub-Saharan Africa. So they do benefit from refugee windows, and it is important that we also design projects and interventions to support them. And of course, after this discussion, we will have better idea about how end user subsidy can benefit us and can be used to scale up nationwide and over longer term for World Bank supported projects and also other donor funds. With that, let me invite Emmanuel to come and share his presentation. We'll have about 20 minutes. I would request him to keep his time to 20 minutes so that we have enough time for discussion and also questions and answers. Thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel. Please come in.
Thank you very much, Rahan and the World Bank team for putting together this exciting webinar. My name is Emmanuel, and as mentioned, I'm the Senior Advisor for Energy Access at Mexico, focusing on programming in the African region. Today, I present to you our programming and lessons that we learned around designing end user subsidies in Uganda. Next. So energy and the climate is very key and cardinal in Mexico's new 10-year pathway to possibility strategy. And in the light of this, we recently merged with Energy for Impact, that many of you know, to really create an exciting and vibrant platform to deepen our energy and climate programming. Through this, we're able to bring innovative market-based programming in energy access, focusing on how we could also maximize the availability of energy through productive use of energy, green jobs, youth employment, financial inclusion, and most importantly, a humanitarian response, and which is the focus of today's experience that I'm going to share with you. Through this, we have deep experience in energy access in over 22 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and this is an exciting partnership, and we look forward to use this to really improve and deepen our experience in this particular sector. Next. So Ampere is let's say 1.5-year project that's funded by RVO, that's a Netherlands enterprise agency, through the Dutch Coalition for Humanitarian Innovation, and this was implemented in Uganda in partnership with SNV and the Response Innovation Lab. Our private sector partners for the energy access component in Uganda were D-Light and Village Power. Just to mention that Ampere is one of the projects that were funded under the particular Dutch Coalition for Humanitarian Innovation. The main goal of Ampere is really to increase access to affordable quality energy by supporting private sector actors to really enter and stay in these frontier difficult markets by working with them to resolve the key constraints to entry. We piloted this in the BDBD settlement in West Nile, and through this we were able to support Delight and Village Power to introduce their services anew in the BDBD settlement. Aside the energy access component, Ampere also worked around innovative energy ideas, which include energy cooperatives that potentially engage in the distribution and sale of products and services. The research component also produced a number of materials that are published, some on our website, that include the mapping of energy service providers that are available for other actors who may be of need of them. Next. So today I'm going to deep dive into the whole subsidy design, and to say that this is one of the first experiences of designing subsidy in a humanitarian context. So it may not be very perfect, but it was a learning for us, and we're using these learnings to further improve our programming, not only in Uganda, but globally as well. We looked at a four-stage process to enable us to really design, implement, and monitor this process, which included a first stage of an extensive market research. We published a number of these reports on our website, basically to provide in-depth understanding of the markets that we're dealing with. The next stage was really now to use this data, this information, to practically engage the off-grid service providers on what we've learned and how we could co-create solutions together to allow them now to operate in this market. Then we moved to a third stage of actually designing the subsidy together with them, moving into awareness creation and activation, and also sales, distribution, and how do we verify some of these installations. The last portion is really to continuous monitoring of the results that has come true, and also looking at the impact of this work in later years. Next. So the first section which I mentioned was the detailed market assessment. So this was conducted. So we did a number of assessments. A first one was in 2013, and as of last year we did another follow-up assessment in the BDBD camp. The main goal was really to understand why the services, pay-go services, energy services products are not available in these refugee markets, as you would find in other developed markets like in the city centers of Kampala, and really to understand how can we work together with the private sector companies to address these constraints to entry. What we really found out was that, of course, energy remains a key topical issue for households and small businesses. We also found, for example, there are small businesses that are looking for energy for small-scale business activities at the camp level. In terms of income, as at last year, which is the recent data that we collected around this, we found out at least the refugee households have average income around $34 per month, with the host communities averaging around $105 per month. Around ability to pay, which was one of the key data points that we used to design the subsidy, we found that when we segment, for example, the customers in the camp, we found that at least they're farmers and small business. So these are like income generating households or clients are able to have at least sufficient disposable income of around $5 per month, which could basically feed into or could be used to afford at least the lowest cost off-grid products, either in upfront payments or for outright purchase for the smaller entry products like lanterns. So this really informed us, especially in the targeting, which we'll see in the next slide. We also confirmed that at least there is off-grid, the willingness of off-grid suppliers to intervene in these markets with the appropriate incentive. In terms of constraints, we found issues around product appropriateness, low consumer awareness around this, and most important, of course, quality and lack of coordination between key actors that were intervening in these particular markets. Next. So in terms of the market segmentation, this was one of the critical data points to allow us to understand which products to introduce to which market segments. We find, of course, like a cross-section of 3 types of products. We have like a single lamp around 50 lumens, this price range of around $8 to $10. This basically could go for the very vulnerable households, persons of concerns in these camps, lanterns to move around. These basically are lanterns that go for cash payment. And then, of course, you have at least bigger versions of some of these lanterns around 220 lumens. In terms of affordability, we found this could easily be affordable for farmers, farmers who at least are able to sell some produce from their farms, and also for MSMEs, small businesses that are operating in the camp. And then you have the bigger solar home systems, which range from around $100 to $200. Basically, in terms of consumer segments that could afford that, we are basically now looking at small businesses that earn some income, and most of these are looking for some of these systems, mostly for business purposes, and most of these solar home systems now go on pay-go basis. So from this, we found out they need to have a mix of products that meets all these consumer segments, and that is how one of the key factors that we use in which partners do we bring on board to provide this mix of products. Next. So from this research analysis stage, we now started engaging with the private sector actors in Uganda. We had face-to-face meetings with about 6 of these companies, the Phoenix, the Delight, the Village Power, to present the data to them to gauge their response. And the most importantly, also to discuss issues around the constraints and what type of incentives will really enable them to participate in these markets. Then from these meetings, we went to the next stage of publishing a public RFA to really invite these companies who are interested, based on this data that was presented to them, for partnership to support their interventions in this market. This is as opposed to a direct procurement, which was a bit prevalent around those times, and we required a lot of co-contribution from the parties and as part of this partnership. The next thing, we assessed 5 applications which came through from that RFA around a will versus skill or capacity metrics. Basically, we found that yes, these companies are operating in the Kampalas, in the city centers, but then you should take a certain will, zeal to now be willing to move to these very difficult frontier markets. And then we also look at what is your capacity to be able to operate in this market based on what the data says. So basically, we are looking for companies that are, if you look at that graph, at least the topmost corner, possesses a very strong will or incentive to operate, and also the capacity to be able to maintain such markets. From this, assessment of these 5 companies, we settled on Delight and Village Power, because they kind of meet the kind of companies that we were looking for, both in terms of products for the market segments and also this capacity and the willingness to intervene in these markets. Then we moved into a co-design section. We spent 2 days designing around the constraints, for example, for constraints around affordability based on the ability to pay data that we have. That's how we came in with the subsidies, and to really test whether they'll be able to pay and also under what necessary conditions. For issues around last mile infrastructure for these companies, this includes access to the camp. We know access to the camp is one key regulated area. It could take about 6 months or more for these companies to now get the necessary access from the office of the Prime Minister to operate in this camp. But with our Mexico and the other parties' existing relationship or access, we're able to piggyback on this and had the necessary approvals from the OPM's office for these private companies now to be able to operate directly in this camp very quickly. Issues around warehousing, storefront, and all of that we designed. We have a number of facilities for the partners. Mexico had a number of innovation centers, which are basically brick and mortar places for meetings and stores that were made available for these companies to use our storefront and warehousing for customers to interact not only with the sales agent, but also with technicians once they have problems. Next. So once that was really done, we now move into the subsidy scheme. So over here, I'm going to present to you, this is a two-stage scheme that we developed. And the goal was really to test affordability. Would consumers be able to pay at least something for energy products and services as opposed to free or direct delivery? And basically, we try to test this idea with two sets of subsidies. With a 60% and a 50% lower subsidy. The subsidy was really meant to reduce the price, the final price of the product. And as I mentioned, it provided additional support, including awareness raising to the companies in this. We launched BDBD for Solar campaign, which was the tag name that we gave to this particular.
May I request colleagues to mute their microphones? Thank you. Thank you. Please.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry for the intervention. So BDBD for Solar was the tag name that we developed jointly together with the companies to bring some buzz also into the whole activity. This was a two-stage process. The first stage was between November and December. We chose November and December because from the report, if you read that further, that was really classified as quote unquote the income season when households have higher disposable income, whether they're sharing profits or savings from the savings groups or they get the remittances. So we chose that particular season to really launch that. The focus was on small entry-level lanterns and also bigger pay-as-you-go systems. 60% subsidy for that first stage. For the lanterns, 60%, consumers pay the outright 40% cash at the point of purchase. For the PayGo units, we targeted 3 sets of products. VP1 is the entry level solar home systems. We have VP2 and the VP6. VP2 and 6 are the larger systems. For that, after the subsidy, you need to make a down payment of between $4 to $40, depending on which product that you are choosing. And after that, you make monthly repayments of around $5 for the VP1, which I'll show you in the next slide into more details, for 12 months. The usual PayGo cycle that we've seen in the sector is between 24 to 36 months. But for this, one key risk that came out during the design process was the risk of flight for refugees. So this was reduced to 12 months for the companies to be able to mop up the remaining payments over time. For the first stage, about 3,600 units product to be sold, combination of PayGo and lanterns. Out of this, we found from the data that more than 70% paid more than the down payment for the PayGo units that showed. And one of the reasons accounting for this was we did a number of pre-sales activations before the December to November outdoor activations. We did a number of targeted interventions, meetings with the village savings and loan groups to really prepare them, save towards this coming intervention. The second stage was in February 2020. This was also a time, of course, the incomes were getting a bit lower after the Christmas break and all of that. And for the second stage, we focused specifically on PayGo Unit 2, also to also gauge whether consumers will still be able to pay a reduced subsidy of 50% now, will still be able to sign up to that. And this was basically only PEGO units, only village power systems. And from the second stage, 166 units were sold. This was a pilot, and that basically project was about ending at that time. We also monitored sales beyond the pilot, and realized about 146 of these units were sold directly by the companies without a subsidy. Next. So this is VP1. I want to dovetail into this. This is VP1 entry-level product home system by Village Power. The market price without the subsidy, cash down payment is about 460,000 Ugandan shillings. If you were going for PEGO installment, you get that for 560. With a subsidy, that brings a cash outright payment of 140. If you opted for the 12-month cycle, comes to about 239. The initial deposit is 15,000 shillings. That's about $4 or $5 at that time, and then continue with a monthly repayment for the next 12 months. Next. So once these sales have been made, the companies go out, they make all the sales, they do all the house installations, targeting, and all of that. Then they need to submit to us reports of those sales to enable us to activate now the payment of the subsidy that we offered them through, of course, a contract. And we call that a verification and subsidy payment section. And we had a team that was in charge of this. Basically, the companies will submit the claims to us that we've reached X number of customers. And as part of that, they need to submit completed customer data forms. This include information on every customer. So either 20 customers that have been claimed to have bought or be installed for. It needs to contain information on each of these customers, the name, the ID number, phone numbers, age status, settlement wherever you are, the down payment, the receipt number, and what is the evidence also of that this customer have paid, either the outright 40% payment or the down payment for the PEGO. And these are usually the receipts that are given these customers for PEGO. We request for the contract, the PEGO contract between Village Power and the customer. And of course, the evidence of the down payment, which is a receipt, mobile money, payment receipt. So all these are consolidated and submitted to us. Our team now engages in verification. So while the sales are ongoing, our team is also on the ground to be doing like the day-to-day tallying for each of the customers. They are on site while this is going. In addition to that, for PEGO, because these are smaller numbers, we did site verification. Usually the PEGO customers are pre-scheduled for their systems to be installed for them. This is also good, necessary for the KYC, because Village Power agents need to know the location, the houses of these customers. So we do all the physical verification that these customers have all the installation for the PEGO. We ask them, of course, additional questions around customer service, if the systems are working well, if they know where to get after sales support for these systems, yes or no. If there are any questions, we refer these specific customers back to Village Power to rectify this before we make those payments. For the lanterns, we sampled around 10% verification by phone. This is basically done by it because that's a large number and a smaller value. Once this is done and there are no issues with any customer to be resolved, then of course we activate the payment to the companies. The key challenges around this, especially of course we know in BDBD and most camps, mobile connectivity is a big issue. It was sometimes difficult to reach customers. Not all the customers, of course, have clients. There could be neighbors using the phone numbers of the best for this. And during COVID, it was very difficult to do the site verifications for the PAYGO clients because of the restrictions that were placed by the national.
This is Raihan. I mean, I know you, I mean, this is a very interesting presentation and you have several more slides, but we are also getting very interesting questions. So I would request you to quickly go through your remaining slides so that we can move to the questions, and then we can go to the other speakers as well, so that we can finish on time and cover everything. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Sure, next. So that was really the end of the practical implementation of the field. A year after that, we conducted another assessment report, which is published also on our website. And of course, the data really demonstrates at least something is happening. Something could be further done with the market approach to energy access in the camp. Segmentation by gender, status, and the income also was very appropriate to the targeting. From this, we found that at least 82% of those who purchased were refugees and 18% non-refugees. The subsidy was very key. Affordability is still a challenge in the camp, and one of the things that we also found out, the focus on who can pay. Basically, the companies go to over there looking for who can pay the down payment would also mean we may be disadvantaging the most vulnerable persons of concern, and these are the things that we need to take into consideration. Next. And 2 years on, that was last year, I was there physically myself to see how things were going, to see whether the companies were really in the camp as was their initial goal. Indeed, COVID has really impacted sales. Most of the companies, as we know, in the off-grid PAYGO sector have either constricted, have either merged, or some have been folded up. They have been reduced sales. What we found was, instead of, let's say, a lot of the sales fronts being in the camp, most of them have moved to Yumbe, which is the nearest city or town. Of course, refugees are able to move in between these two places to purchase. Of course, limited pilots. This was just a one-year pilots are not very. They are not that. They are not. We need more systemic thinking around this, trying to, especially if we want to scale the momentum into like a longer duration support to the sector. Lastly, I wanted to say that in terms of the PAYGO clients, out of over 600 customers, at least 350 plus have fully paid up all their loans. And there were still about 240 that were still in default, also because, of course, COVID has really impacted incomes, and the ability of the companies now to follow up also on the sales was really challenging as well. Next. I think lastly, I want to say that maybe for all the partners on board, we need to see, especially for the companies, we need to see how we could localize sales. There were issues around quality of products, and being able to build trust at the local level was really important. Of course, we need to look beyond pilot projects. There's still significant risk, and we need to do also more work on how we are very inclusive in this design and implementations as well. Next, I think that's the last. Sure. So there are additional resources, I'm sure, around this project, and also our broader energy access work that you could benefit from. Thank you, and over to you, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I think you have inspired a lot of questions. I mean, it's already full. I don't think we can cover all these questions right now. Let me take one or two questions, and then we'll move to the other speakers. And then at the end, we'll open it up and have some of them. So just to clarify, were the households aware of the subsidy that were applied, and that the price that they're paying is adjusted for subsidy? I think that's a question we can ask now. And I also wanted to understand that how did you come about on the subsidy level? Was it through a workshop, or you decided it before and then disseminated it through the community co-design workshops? Let's have these two questions, and then we can take other questions later. You're muted.
Sorry. So yes, the users, the consumers were aware that these are subsidized products and these are not the full market prices. Of course, some of them, of course, know the price of some of this. So this is very much public knowledge. We need to communicate this such that once, and we made it very clear that this was timed and will end at a point. So the earlier you take advantage, the better. We made it very clear, this product to be available at the market prices. The whole goal we wanted to use was not only to test that consumers could at least pay something for energy services, but also to use it to engineer the market, introduce that into the market as well. The second question on how did we come about the subsidy. So in terms of the subsidy point, how do we come up, let's say 60 or 50%? So for 60%, we looked at, as you saw in the data, that at least the disposable income available for purchase was around $4 or $5 to be used for this service. And so we looked at, if we're looking at a pay-go product, that could be run for only 12 months. That comes to, let's say, around $50, $60. That basically covers like half of the price of that full pay-go price. So basically, from what the data says, consumers could only pay close to about 60 or 50% of those products if those customers, those companies went to the market. So the data really informed what was the point at which the consumers could pay and where we can fix the subsidy. We've seen improvements in income over time since 2019, and also from the data that we collected last year. And we believe, for example, there could still be better way of targeting this over time with a new project as well. And of course, this fed into the design workshop with the companies where we really came to an agreement around this subsidy point.
Right. And just before I go to Bettina, I mean, you said that the refugees had a much lower income level than the host communities, but then you had a same subsidy for all. But then at the end, in your results, we see that more than 80% of the beneficiaries were refugees and less than about 18% were host communities. Do you have any idea why that happened?
So yes, that's true in terms of income disparity. What we also found was that, of course, if you look at the geographical location of these communities, most of the activations were actually happening closer, more to the refugee communities. We targeted them a lot more. It was difficult at that point to have a differentiated subsidy scheme because of also the kind of social cohesion issues that it would create at that point. And that was still a learning stage for us. And maybe there's a better way that we could target this more in future interventions.
Thank you. So let me invite Bettina now. Bettina, I mean, you're also a partner with us on the End User Subsidy Lab. And I wanted you to share with us that how your other works on blended subsidy and end user subsidy can benefit from this experience of Mercy Corp. And I mean, and then what are other key challenges that you'd like to add that you think that needs to be addressed through end user subsidy? To you, Bettina.
Yes. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, all the participants. Maybe I can start by explaining that from 2018, NDEF has Energizing Development has been carrying out results-based financing, so supply side subsidies actually within the Ugandan markets. And while Mercy Corps was implementing the Ampere project, we were of course also very well linked to them and took note of what they were already experiencing. However, at that point, also due to our own assessment in settlements, we were trying to do a supply side subsidy also within the refugee settlements. So we started that with cook stove companies in October 2020, and then also with solar companies from early 2021. So we were also allowing sales in both refugee hosting districts as well as the refugee settlements itself. And what we realized during this time, partly a lot of sales were happening around major trading centers or also the main municipality, the city, Arua city. Probably because there were people with higher incomes, also some of the companies who had not been in the refugee context yet were trying to first have a hub established in the city. And so the distance to the refugee settlements actually also became an additional step that they had to overcome. So we also realized and got that feedback from the companies that the purchasing power of refugees was indeed also still lower. That was expected, but we also were seeing how far it would have worked. The first two rounds, so with the cookstove companies and the solar companies, were not bringing as many sales within the refugee community itself as we had expected and hoped for. And therefore, we also looked a bit closer into redesigning our current projects. So what we then came up with, also recognizing that having maybe sales hubs in a bigger trading center or in the city was of course a good strategy, so that it was also an opportunity for a basis, but we needed to also get our partners closer to the refugees. So the current programs that are running right now started in July 2022 as well as September, again with cookstove companies and solar companies, have slightly differentiated incentives on the supply side. And we have added a blended subsidy that is now also focusing on the affordability gap. So giving the opportunity for the more rural customers to also afford some of these systems. So we are learning. We have been also supporting some of the efforts of our partners with additional awareness campaigns, because besides the affordability gap, we have also noticed that even the knowledge level on the benefits and how to use these technologies were too low. So that is, according to us at the moment, still an important aspect for the program. What we also realized of recent, and it's probably mostly the case, is a high mobility within the refugee context. Anyways, we definitely could see that the support in months where our team of NDEF and GIZ ESDS, that's a sister program to NDEF, came alongside the partners and did awareness campaigns, including market activation, roadshows, etc., have helped to increase the sales. This is now data that is a bit more apparent for the cookstove companies because they were ready at that time to participate in the awareness campaign. And this is scheduled to also take place in the coming weeks. So, yeah, I think it has been a good journey at the moment to also do the end user subsidy. So an element of end user subsidy as well as an element of supply side subsidy. Now, with the new design, we are actually under NDEF. We are in the design phase for demand side subsidy. Here we are now leaving the side of supply side subsidy and target primarily the affordability gap, for instance. So we will continue with targeting refugees within the settlements as well as in hosting and affected districts. So sorry, I should have maybe said that differently. Also the host community members, primarily in the West Nile region. So we are mixing a demographic and a geographic targeting. And we will likely consider or will continue to discuss, because all of it is under the theme of leaving no one behind, that we are also looking if we can include people with specific needs that are even having less of an income than others. In terms of technologies, it will be again solar lighting solutions and solar home systems. And we will, on the cooking side, also promote the cook stove products. Here we're looking at emissions. Then the supply side delivery mechanism will be that it will go through the companies. So companies will offer their product on a promotional price, so to say. That's and with the knowledge of the customers that this is now going to be cheaper, and they will then be refunded after a verification exercise by us. So confirming that also a verification exercise will be important with 4 stages. Here we're looking at data consistency check with the data that is being collected by the companies, paper trail check, phone verification, and also field verification. As I plan on communication and outreach, so that we are also even coordinating with the other stakeholders such as Mercy Corps and others on the ground. And I think because I was given some of the minutes only, I think we are also using one opportunity to make use of energy kiosks that we are have established under the same projects. And those are already teams of nationals and refugees that are offering good quality products on sale as well as energy services. I mean, we can maybe talk about this also still a little bit later, but we definitely share a lot of the experiences that Mercy Corps had, and that's also why we adjusted the program already a bit. But I think we also learned a lot on how to do the awareness side of things, just to mention one for the moment.
Thank you, Bettina. I know the time is short. I mean, because we want to hear from so many of you. You have so many rich experience. And then there's so many good questions that are coming from the audience. So let's try to see how we can pack everything within this 1 hour, 15 minutes. So I will now move to Simon and Alan. They are the practitioners of this pilot, both from Greenlight Planet and Village Power. And the question I'm asking both of you to answer the same question, and that is, the pilot is over, but are you still there? Post-pilot, are you still there? Are you still making the cells? What are the challenges are you finding? And what additional support do you think you need to grow access and penetration of solar home systems, solar lanterns, and electricity in the refugee areas, in off-grid areas from the public sector? Maybe Simon, you could come first.
Thank you very much once again, Simon. It's a very interesting question, and quite a number of challenges and learnings have basically been all well articulated by Emmanuel. Mercy Corps, we've actually had a very good working relationship with them, as well as Bettina and GIZ. It's been a wonderful experience working with you people, and we're still working there. The question you posed was, we are just still in the refugee host areas, settlement areas, and specifically Bidi West Nile, and also Kiriandongo in the Midwestern region, that is in the area of Masindi, Midwestern region, like I mentioned earlier on. We have quite a number of learnings, and then also quite a number of what I would call maybe challenges that we have actually tried our best to encounter and also maybe mitigate and go through. One is we've learned a lot that we really had to deal with the community, with the local people, because in terms of acceptability, it was a very new kind of initiative. There was quite a number of learnings. People were completely clueless and unaware, so there was a lot of sensitization that was made. And also maybe there was a bit of us actually getting used to the culture of the local people. So quite a number of learnings we got in there. And then also we are able to actually involve the community by recruiting the community into being a sales representative for us, freelance sales representative for us, supporting us, one, in spreading the word of mouth, one-on-one word of mouth, and also number two, also being part and parcel of the entire project. Then when we also noticed that the subsidy, at times it was thought that it was a 60-40%. Mercy Corps was financing 60%, then the refugee and maybe the host community 40%. So we also noticed that it was something to do with technology was also a bit of a challenge. However, it caused some kind of excitement. Now, we also went in a lot in doing a lot of above the line communicating into local radios. We had local radio passes. So it was an opportunity for us also to actually send our message onto the ground and also actually inform our people. Then we also learned that we actually needed to bring our services closer to the people, specifically to support the host community. We had to actually open up experience centers, what we would call mini service centers in the area of Yumbe, and then also we had to open another experience center, a big one in the area of Arua. So this also support, in a way, it was a learning, and it helped us actually do that as well. What we also noticed was we learned also in a way that affordability is still a challenge in a way, in that the host communities' income are too seasonal. So where you find that the host community are basically dependent on the harvest season, and even when the harvest is bad, so it's going to be very bad for them to pay back, especially on the paygo systems. So basically, yes, we are still in the two, we're still there under GIZ with the support of GIZ and also Mercy Corps. So I expect with the learnings that we've actually picked up, we will actually do much better in terms of, one, extending the services to our people, and then also being part and parcel of the project. I pause.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. This was very brief and to the point. Thank you so much for that. So let me go to Alan. Same questions, Alan. Are you still there? And what are the challenges are you finding?
All right, thank you very much. Yes, short answer is yes, we're still in the camp. We managed to survive the COVID experience and managed to have enough of activity in there and some staffing on ground to keep at least that segment viable for the company. And just some context. So I transitioned out of Village Power into a new startup called Tukole, which basically focuses on after-sales service as well as other blue-collar labor. But basically, I'm the technical partner for Village Power. So we're actually there on the new project, actually, under GIZ as well. And so we have 200 solar technicians countrywide. And so basically, after the project, there was such high demand in Bidibidi, especially within all 5 zones. But what the demand was, it was limited by their affordability, that entry-level market rate price without the subsidy. And so they were actually some of the new customers we're having now were able to convert because of the new programs that we're able to run with other partners like GIZ. But basically, we had to sustain ourselves in the camp by doing a lot of after-sale service. There was a lot of restructuring of payment plans for customers, and it was quite hard to do that with a very slim team. There are a lot of challenges that everyone has touched on, but I'll just highlight 2 or 3 that are very unique to running a paygo business model in the last mile. Number 1 is, we try to incorporate the local talent, so the refugees and host community people within our teams to tackle the language barrier aspect. But that was still also a challenge at HQ, where a lot of the administrative work is also done. So we had to find people who could actually speak 4 to 5 of these different indigenous languages within the camp in Kampala to be able to adequately manage remotely during COVID the paygo portfolios. The other option was to send someone on ground, which basically increase the cost of after-sales service, increase the cost of collecting the money, sending someone physically to visit every single customer from every zone, which took a while. And so it actually led customers having money and just not seeing someone from Village Power and creating that, making them fall back on their payment plan. So that was one issue that we found. And then the administrative workload with PAYGO is quite large. So just managing, working with platforms, working with apps, dealing with a lot of paperwork for the payment plans and payments and receipts. And so that was also an increased investment on our end to upskill the local talent we found there. And if we took people there, they would be poached by other companies. High delight. So basically it was that loop of trying to find adequate talent within, for example, in Zone 5, someone that lives there that's willing to work within this business and is also excited about, preaching the gospel of access to energy. Additional support that we think can increase the uptake of solar would be, and I want to stress this point, increased awareness, 100%, because you find that most of these customers, even if we had been there for a year, a large majority of the community still had not fully understood the use case for how solar can benefit them, because we had done a series of SACO visits to try, and it was based on the day that we're there. The people who attended the SACO meeting had heard about it. People who had seen the system had heard about it, but for sure, a majority of the communities still had very little information about what solar can do for them, how they save for it. And that was a critical factor, giving these people enough time to save up. Yes, their incomes are inconsistent and low, but once they found out about the project or found out that we were around and available, then they were able to start saving towards that. And it took 2 months, 3 months, but we needed to give them that time to do that with consistent awareness. And I think that's still something that we as a community or as stakeholders in this access to energy challenge need to keep investing in, because we assume, yes, we preach this every day to each other, but out there in the last mile, they still don't know. Then number 2 is the infrastructure. Yes, we set up, we were in the Zone 2 and Zone 4 Innovation Center, but after COVID, we had to decrease our footprint and move back to Yumbe, but mainly in Arua town was our main outreach. We still had someone on ground in Zone 2, but we still need many more stock points, because selling to these clients who have so many competing needs for their incomes, I mean, education, health, and all this, when they see you is when they want to make that purchase decision, and they usually tell you, hey, bring the system now. And we had to then send these things from Kampala to Arua, then from Arua to Yumbe, and then to Zone 5 or Zone 4 or Zone 2. And so that's delay and lag would also lead to decreased uptake, because they would just lose interest or find another use case or another option for the money, and then they'd wait for the next stock to come. So just having more stock on ground, so investing in more brick and mortar, and maybe that's something that we could consider as part of this. I like the innovation center, innovation outreach areas where the communities actually know that this is where we find these energy suppliers. And not having that and building your own, you still need to create the awareness around that. And that was something that really helped. I think day one, we made like 99 sales in one day, because we had 2 months leading up to the launch at the Innovation Center. Everyone knew around there, and they would just show up and take the products, and we would do the installations immediately. Yeah, so I can leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. I mean, I must say that there is a very vibrant chat going on. I could see that Simon is also responding to some of the questions he got from Baguma. So thanks for that. Let me now invite Madam Speciosa. Madam Speciosa, I mean, I can't think a better time of this webinar, where you have now this experience from this end user subsidy lab. The experience that Mercy Corp has done, and the experience of Delight and Village Power that you're hearing. I would like you to, and then there are more than 130 participants in this webinar. So you are now just launching a new project. Maybe this is a right time for you to inform us about the EASP project. How do you think that your project can benefit activities like this? How it can support electrification in refugee areas, and tell us about that. How do you think that this kind of energy lab activities or pilots can help you design your project and implement and support better? Thank you. Ms. Peshiza.
Yeah, thank you, Raihan. As introduced, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, we are a government institution in place to provide innovative financing solutions for access to clean energy. And in this regard, we have been implementing various financing programs to enable access to clean energy technologies. But we had not so far entered the refugee host communities. So under the upcoming electricity access scale-up project, which is a government of Uganda project funded by the World Bank, we have a specific component for refugee host districts. Under the electricity access scale-up project, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company will be implementing the financial intermediation component for off-grid energy access. And with regard to refugees and refugee host districts, participation in this dialogue is very timely because we are at the design stage of this particular intervention, and we are actually learning a lot from the presentations and experiences so far, both from Masecops and the solar companies that have so far shared their experience. So under the ESP project, with regard to the refugees and refugee host intervention, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company is going to provide end user affordability constraints, subsidies. And we are happy to note that this will be building on the experiences and already work undertaken by other players like GIZ and Masecops has already shared in this dialogue. The subsidies will be delivered through participating private energy companies upon verification of sales. The other intervention that we are also going to provide in the refugee host districts is credit facilities for access to clean energy technologies. And in this regard, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company is going to provide credit facilities through microfinance institutions and savings and credit cooperative organizations, all circles operating in the refugee host districts for on lending to end users and small and medium enterprises in the refugee host districts. The need for this intervention has actually been highlighted by the experience of Masecops, and the lesson learned supports the need for this intervention, because in the Masecops presentation, it has been indicated that one of the lessons learned was that refugees and the refugee host districts can actually acquire clean energy technologies through access to credits ranging from up to 12 months or using their income. So the Masecops experience has shown us that actually the refugees have the ability to pay, as well as the members of the refugee host communities using their incomes. We are also going to provide product, or going to address the challenge of product appropriateness and availability in the refugee host communities. And we are going to do this by providing incentives and technical assistance, targeting private energy companies to enable them expand in refugee hosting districts. And this will enable the companies to address the challenges of product availability in these areas. And of course, in this dialogue, we expect to learn more about the specific interventions that the companies and incentives that the companies expect to receive in order to effectively reach out to the refugee hosted districts. One of the lessons learned under the MASECOP's experience as shared in this dialogue is that focusing on the ability to pay may lead to the exclusion of the most vulnerable groups in the refugee hosted districts. So under the ESP project, UECC, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, intends to address this through higher subsidy levels in the refugee hosted districts compared to the rest of the country in order to address the vulnerable segments most encountered in the refugee hosted districts. We are also going to provide or address the challenge of market linkages in order to reduce the cost of last mile distribution of clean energy technologies in refugee hosted districts. And in this regard, under ESP project, UECC is going to provide result-based incentives and technical assistance to clean energy companies to enable them expand in the refugee hosted districts. And again, through this dialogue, we are pleased to learn more from the practitioners, that is Delight, and the other company that is participating, and would like to continue this dialogue so that we design a responsive program that meets the needs of the targeted companies that we expect to expand in the refugee hosted districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Speciosa. These were very helpful information. I just wanted to add that under your ESP project, in addition to supporting electrification of households through standalone solar systems, UCCC is also extending support for electrification of productive users and also public institutions like health centers and schools through private solar companies where a service-based model will be used. This is probably for the first time UCCC will be trying out, but there are some examples and experiences elsewhere. So thank you. Let me thank all the panelists for their presentations. We probably have more questions that we can discuss, but for the interest of time, let me pick up one or two questions. But I would request colleagues that in this forum, the information that you have gathered and the people that you have come to know that who are experienced on these issues, please get in touch with them. Maybe you can learn through a one-to-one discussion much more. So the first question that I would pick up, and thanks to Jenny and Fede for collating the questions in a manner so that it is efficient. We wanted to know from Simon and Alan that how did this support of subsidy and user subsidy helped or affected your supply chain? Solar providers, logistics, repairs, supply parts, financiers, market sales, B2B linkages. There's many things that makes a project happen. How did it affect you at the beginning, and then now that the subsidy is not there, how does it affect you now? And I understand you are still there, you are managing, it's hard, but shedding some light on that would be helpful.
Thank you very much. I hinted on this earlier on, and well, it's really helped us, and quite a number of things that we've learned. One, and also number two is in terms of it has done a lot of brand awareness and brand building. The Delight brand is now known within the host communities and also within the West Nile region. Basically, that is the biggest one we've learned, and then also we've noticed that we've also gotten partners. We've been able to partner. It's basically been like an icebreaker in certain markets for us in the West Nile region. Brand awareness. And also number two is the acceptability. We've noticed that we are now getting into corporate social responsibility as a result of us being in the host communities. We're actually being invited by quite a number of other partners because they have learned that we are partnering with big partners like GIZ, Massive Ops. So we are also getting invites from other partners if we can actually partner with them. So it's really been big, much as we are still there, yes. And then also in terms of manpower, we've actually expounded on our manpower in those regions, like I mentioned earlier on. So basically, it's a very big positive to us, and then also quite a number of learnings that we have picked up. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask the second question to Alan. What is the operational maintenance model that you implement to ensure that you have sustainability, long-term sustainability? Simon?
To Simon or to me?
To Alan. I was reading Simon's name below, so that's why I just said it.
Understood. No problem. Yeah, during the project, that was pre-COVID. The main Village Power business model was last mile sales and distribution. So the main operation model was to set up a local branch, send stock there, recruit locally, and then train local technicians, and then deploy them to work. But now with this project, we now had over 400 systems in the market, and then very limited access to them for about a year. And due to the effects of COVID, we had to restructure. We had, I think, close to 15 different outlets countrywide. That's a team of 5 or 6 per branch, and then with additional overheads at HQ. And so we had to rethink the whole business model. And now we're moving forward with more of a partnership model. So Tukole actually has partnered with Village Power, but we are also partnering with other solar players in the sector to do an on-demand technical service model, just to remove the overhead of having, I mean, during this project, we had to send most of the technicians to do the installations on a day-by-day basis. So we had close to 5-6 technicians doing installations every day. And then with COVID, we had to keep busing them in. These ones go for rest, bring some more in. And so with an on-demand model, we don't need to have technicians travel from Arua, for example, or from Lira, or from Oyam to come and support on such projects. We recruit as Tukole locally, we upskill, we profile, and then any technician or household that needs a service just knows how to contact the call center, or if they have access to an app, then they can download Tukole and request an on-demand location-based service. And so that's the model that Village Power is deploying now, which is with me. And we hope that the rest of the sector can also maybe use that, but still recruit locally, definitely, so that communities actually have someone they know that's trained to do the repetitive repair and maintenance. If it needs anything more technical than that, then you can do a reverse logistics, branch to HQ, send a repair part, the person still does the same labor on ground.
Thank you. I mean, I wanted to ask a question to Bettina about this solar kiosk. How does it differ from the traditional off-grid solar market, and are the customers different? Bettina, can you come and say it in 30 seconds? Bettina, you're there, but have you dropped off? Are you there? I think we just lost Bettina. Sorry for that. So maybe that we are on. Sorry, are you there, Bettina?
Well, I thought actually this is the question that could
Sorry, I can't hear you well, Bettina. Can you repeat what you just said? Maybe for the interest of time,
Hello.
we not go for any more question answer today. I hope that's okay for now. We will have more opportunities of this type of seminars. Maybe thank you for putting this slide where we talk about that we will have publications of these case studies. We'll have deep dives of this type of subsidy designs more. And we will want this end user subsidy, which is, as I said, a partnership between bank, SMAP, GOGLA, and NDEV to continue more. I would like to request Patrick Tonoyu of GOGLA to come and share some of his closing remarks for this session. Patrick, are you there?
Yes, I am. And thank you so much to everybody for joining us and really for this interesting webinar. I think as we come to the close, I want to take us back to the context of the Subsidy Lab and what it is and why the partners with SMAP and NDEV and GOGLA have come together. We all recognize that if we are to rise up to this energy access challenge, at the same time also make sure that we help deliver the promise of what energy access does for economic and social development, we cannot afford to leave anybody behind. And I think this is what we've really been wrestling with, that the communities that don't have access to energy are the ones who can least afford. And we have to really explore sustainable ways to provide mechanisms that provide them that access. And we have reached the conclusion jointly that this does include support mechanisms that really bring down the price. This series of webinars and the learning from the community, from the Subsidy Lab, are exploring that, trying to learn what has been tried before, what has worked, what hasn't worked. This is, I think, the 6th of the webinars that we're having, and you can see, if you go to the Subsidy Lab website on the GOGLA portal, you will see the previous webinars, what those case studies look like and the models that were explored, how they worked, what lessons have come from that. And I really thank the opportunity to explore this webinar for Uganda, that's looking at how can we also deliver energy access for displaced communities, people living in this displaced or places with different circumstances, both for those who are displaced as well as the communities that are exploring them. As previously shared, you will see that these lessons are being adopted as lessons learned for some of the models of the forthcoming subsidy mechanisms that will be provided. And we invite all of you to please walk this journey with us. If you've got information or other case studies or models that the partners can learn, we as GOGLA can learn, and please do enrich us so that we are constantly learning, we are exploring, we're figuring out what's worked, and we do replicate them, and what's not worked, let's see what we can do to avoid making those mistakes. I want to say thank you to everybody as I wrap up. I invite you, please do reach out to us in the Subsidy Lab. Our contacts are there. Or those who that invited you for this webinar, or to any of us, and we'd be glad to share this that information. And thank you again to all our partners, NDEV, the SMAP team, for all our speakers, including UEC-CCC, Mexico, the team from Village Power and Tokole, and as well as D-Light for sharing their lessons and their experiences. And thank you, and we look forward to having you at the next event of the webinar of the Subsidy Lab. Thank you, and I'll give it back to you, Raihan, to wrap up.
Thank you, Patrick. I mean, I just got a text from Bettina that she had a bad connection, and maybe if she has a better connection now, since we couldn't hear her answer and we still have some time, I just wanted to check whether she is there. Bettina, can you hear me?
Is it working?
Okay. I'm not sure whether, Fede, can you confirm whether you could hear Bettina? Because I couldn't.
No, the line is a bit, complicated.
I see. Okay. So then probably, Bettina, I mean, we'll have other opportunities later, but I really wanted to hear your views on this energy kiosk, because when you're presenting, you also said that you will come back later. Fede, is there anything that, I mean, we have some minutes left, but wanted to understand that, and we do have many questions. Is there any way that some of those questions can be answered in writing from the speakers? Can we do that?
Yes, we don't have any more time left. So we've encouraged the speakers to answer those questions in writing. So we'll when we disseminate information, we'll make sure those are answered.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to make sure of that. So with that, I wanted to thank the speakers, of course, Emmanuel, Simon, Alan, Bettina, and Speciosa. And I also wanted to thank the organizers, Federico, Jennifer, and then the colleagues Patrick, Tony, and Simone from Gogla, who made this happen. We are trying to see how we can push the boundary. These are new areas, and that's why we will make mistakes. But this is why I think these kind of labs and discussions are important, so that we learn from each other's mistakes and then design our projects better. With that, I wanted to thank you all, and then wanted to close the session for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good.
Hold on. You know, I want to take a photo of what is going on. Okay, to call it.